My stepmother is against me going to college because it would upset her son, and my father backs him up. Now they're even asking me to return my own money. Where should I begin? I'm 20 years old and have cut off ties with my family, especially my dad. The rest don't matter to me. It all started 2 years ago when I got accepted into a top university. The happiest moment of my life. I had worked endlessly for years, giving up sleep, social, activities, and even my mental health to make sure I had the grades and extracurriculars needed for acceptance. Getting into a prestigious school wasn't just about status. It was about proving to myself that all my hard work was meaningful. I was over the moon, and when I told my father, he was ecstatic, dancing and hugging me. However, his wife and her son didn't share our joy. The family situation is a bit complicated. My mother passed away when I was 12, and 3 years later, my father remarried a woman we'll call Jessica. She always wanted me to call her mom, but I just couldn't. Jessica never really liked me. She's the type who thinks everything revolves around her, and her main concern has always been making sure her son Billy didn't feel inferior in any way. Billy is a year older than me, but a complete slacker like his mother. He didn't work, study, or have any future plans, just lived off our parents. I mostly kept my distance from them. I didn't care what he did with his life until Jessica started playing dirty to stop me from reaching my goals, and that's when the conflict started. When I told them about my acceptance, Jessica gave my father a strange look, and all his excitement faded as he sat down next to her. I asked what was wrong, and she said, "It's just surprising that you got accepted so quickly." Then, with a doubtful tone, she asked when I had applied and how I planned to handle the expenses. I replied, "My mother left money for my tuition. I'm going to use that." She looked at my father and said, "Oh, that money? You should have informed us of your plans." I wasn't in the mood to argue, so I answered politely, "I didn't have high hopes of getting accepted. It wasn't easy, so I wanted to wait for the results before telling anyone." She didn't seem satisfied with my answer and kept questioning me as if I were being interrogated. I told them the dates I'd be leaving and asked my father to settle my fund as soon as possible. Since I was born, my mother had set aside money in a trust for my education. After she passed away, it was left under my father's control until I turned 18. Jessica and my father were less than thrilled. In fact, they were completely against it. They didn't see this as a life-changing opportunity for me. They saw it as a threat. The next morning, my father timidly suggested I consider enrolling in a nearby community college and dropped the idea of going to such an expensive university. Naturally, I got upset and asked what was going on. He kept giving me the same response. "I'm just scared of sending you so far away." No matter how much I pressed, that's all he'd say. I broke down. Who wouldn't? Instead, he asked me to give up on my dreams. Finally, he broke down himself and admitted he's worried Billy would feel hurt. I lost it, yelling, "Why on earth is he trying to control my life?" Jessica entered the room at that moment, and I realized she had been listening in. She said she was proud of my achievements, but as parents, they needed to be fair to both children. She said it wasn't fair for me to go to a top university while my brother went to a community college. I was speechless. Billy, who had never lifted a finger in his life, was suddenly the victim because I had achieved something. I argued that I had worked relentlessly for 2 years, sacrificing all my happiness, comfort, and leisure for my dream, and now they were tearing it apart because it made Billy look like a failure. I wasn't going to accept that. Jessica got angry when I called Billy a failure, although it was the truth. He's lazy. He does nothing all day. stares at my friends when they visit, and spreads rumors about me and them. Billy, who was at home, joined. Jessica in ganging up on me, saying I had no right to comment on him or raise my voice. Jessica even tried to hit me, but I dodged. I'm not some thug who fights like she does. I told her if she tried that again, I'd report her to the police for some suspicious activities she and her friends were involved in at her buddy's shop. She backed down immediately, cursing and calling me names. I told Jessica and my father that I was going to college whether they liked it or not, and that's when things really went downhill. Jessica threatened to cut me off financially unless I dropped the idea. She said the money my mother left was under my father's control, and they would make sure I didn't see a penny if I kept going with my plan. She even had the nerve to suggest I take a gap year to reconsider my decision and give Billy time to get his life together. I looked at my father, hoping he'd support me, and asked, "Can you please back me up?" But instead, he started, crying, and said, "What can I do? I'm torn between you two. We need to respect her wishes. She's the head of the household." Head of the household? What nonsense. I stormed out after saying that. It was the first time I'd spoken like that in front of my father. I spent the day at a friend's place, and when I came back late that night, my father approached me, upset about how things had escalated that morning. I thought he regretted not standing up for me, but boy, was I wrong. He told me that my decision was ruining his marriage and asked if my dream of attending an elite university was worth risking his marriage. I was speechless. I felt like I was living in an alternate universe where logic didn't exist. He begged me to listen to Jessica, not for my own good, but because he feared his marriage would fall apart if he didn't feed his wife's fragile ego. I lost it and told him I was sick of being manipulated by his tears. If his marriage was so fragile, maybe it wasn't worth saving. Then came the worst moment. He became aggressive and gave me an ultimatum. Attend a community college and stay, or follow my dream to a prestigious university and leave forever. For many, it might have been an impossible choice, but for me, it was clear as day. I looked him directly in the eyes and gave him another option. He should choose between me and his wife. Unsurprisingly, he chose her. He and Jessica attempted to block access to my mother's trust fund, but I contacted my mother's lawyer. One call from him was enough to make them hand over the documents and the check. I packed my belongings, left for university, and haven't looked back since. Now, I'm in my second year of a 4-year program. I won't claim that life is perfect. It's not. Getting into an elite university is one thing, but graduating from it is a whole other challenge. It takes immense effort and dedication, which is why it's so highly regarded. This drama unfolded 2 years ago, but just last week, my father started texting me, asking how I was doing. Yesterday, he informed me that he'd bought a plane ticket to visit. I responded that I didn't want to see him, but he sent me a photo of the ticket anyway. He said he was sorry and wanted to mend our relationship. I'm torn. Part of me wants to ignore him completely, but another part, the naive, hopeful side, wants to confront him, hear him out, and maybe even ask about his toxic marriage. I'm curious. Are they still together? How's that going? Update 1. Sorry for the delay in updating. I shared some details in the comments, but here's the full story. After much thought, I decided to meet my father. Initially, everything was warm and pleasant. I showed him around the city, took him to dinner, and we avoided the elephant in the room. Finally, on the day of his departure, he brought it up. He started by saying, "These 2 days with you have been wonderful. It's brought back so many childhood memories." I responded, "I wish things were still like that. Everything was great when Mom was around, and even after she passed, I loved spending time with you when it was just us. He interrupted. Yes, but we have a family now, and we should respect each other. It would have been lovely if Jessica and Billy were here, so we could enjoy this as a family. In that moment, my view of him completely shifted. I wanted to interrupt, but chose to let him continue to see where it was going. He went on, Jessica loves you as much as she loves Billy. She was upset because she was scared of sending you so far away. There was another reason she opposed using the tuition money. She wanted to invest it in her business. But I refused. I gave it to you instead of her. That's why she threw a tantrum. You know how women get about money. They can be so difficult when things don't go their way. After rambling about unrelated nonsense, he finally said, I was thinking, could you call Jessica and apologize? Maybe invite her here this weekend? I'm sure she'd forgive you if you made an effort. I stared at him in disbelief. He brushed it off, saying, Oh, come on. Be mature. Just apologize and make things right. Essentially, he wanted me to apologize for pursuing my education and, on top of that, take responsibility for his wife's outrageous behavior. I told him firmly, I'm not apologizing to that woman. He lost his temper, raising his voice. You've become selfish. All you care about is yourself. You've caused problems in my marriage, and I'm the one dealing with the fallout. My wife is struggling financially because I didn't fund her business. I gave the money to you instead. Now I have to face her tantrums, and all I'm asking is for you to apologize. Is that so hard? I shot back. You didn't do me a favor by giving me my own money. That money was mine, saved by Mom and written into her will. If you're miserable, it's because you chose a terrible partner. Either grow a backbone or get a divorce. Furious, he grabbed his bag and left. I was supposed to drive him to the airport, but after that fight, I had no interest in seeing him again. I assume he took a taxi or bus. I neither know nor care. That's the end of it. I plan to maintain no contact, just as I've done for the past 2 years. Family drama is behind me, and now I'm back to working hard for my degree. Update 2. It's been 2 years since my last post. I don't know if anyone who read it is still here, but here's an update anyway. I didn't maintain contact with my father or anyone else from my family. A few months later, though, he started reaching out again. He sent regular texts, birthday and holiday cards, voicemails, and calls. I rarely responded, usually just a quick thank you if I replied at all. I even told him twice to stop contacting me, because I didn't want a father who couldn't support me during tough times. Yet he persisted, as if it were some kind of ritual. I stopped paying attention and focused on my life at university. Now, I'm about to graduate with my bachelor's degree. The good news? I've already secured an amazing job offer through my university internship. I can't reveal the company's name, but it's a major one. That's one of the perks of attending a top-tier university. It creates countless opportunities. I'm working toward building a bright future for myself, but, as always, my father isn't far behind, trying to bring unnecessary drama into my life. With my graduation day approaching, he has been relentlessly messaging me, asking for an invitation. According to him, he and Jessica want to attend the ceremony to celebrate my success. I was direct with him and said no. There was no way I'd let people who actively tried to sabotage my education show up and pretend they supported me all along. They have no right to share in my success after doing everything they could to prevent it. He refused to accept my answer and kept pushing for an invitation. His messages varied from expressing disappointment, saying he couldn't believe I didn't want him there, to guilt-tripping me, claiming He did his best to raise me, but I wasn't buying any of it. He insisted that seeing me graduate was a dream come true for him and that I was denying him that joy, but I still didn't budge. Now that my finals are done, my results are in, and I've secured a job, my graduation ceremony is happening this Friday. I didn't tell my father about the job, but a friend of mine shared a congratulatory post about it on Instagram, and I reshared it on my story. That's how they found out. Since then, Jessica has been calling me repeatedly without leaving any messages, just non-stop calls. After ignoring her for a while, I decided to confront her. When I finally answered, she got straight to the point. She said, "Kid, I don't know what game your father is playing, and I don't care. All I know is you owe me the money you took. You used up the funds we had for college, and I needed that money for my business. Now that you've landed a great job, I want you to pay it back." I couldn't help but laugh, not literally, but in disbelief. I told her, "I don't owe you a single cent. That money belonged to my mother, and no one had any right to it, not even my father." Jessica lost her temper and shouted, "Then why did your father tell me he had so much money when we were dating? I asked him to invest it in my business, but he kept stalling, and then he gave it all to you." By then, I was fed up. I yelled back, "I don't want to be dragged into your issues. They don't involve me, and I couldn't care less. That money was mine, saved by my mother, and outlined in her will. I owe nothing to anyone." She started, cursing my father, and added, "You have no idea what kind of man he is. He's been telling me he's been spoiling you and only wants to attend your stupid graduation to get the money back for me. I'm losing patience here. I don't care about your event. I just want the money." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. My father's motives were now clear. He wasn't reaching out because he was proud or happy about my achievements. He had been manipulating me emotionally, aiming to recover the money for Jessica. I didn't say another word and ended the call. Jessica called me several more times, but I ignored her and eventually blocked her number. Before blocking my father, I sent him a message saying Jessica had exposed his true intentions and that I no longer considered him my dad. For the next 2 days, I was in a daze. I always knew my father was submissive and unable to stand up to Jessica or Billy, but I hadn't realized he was so deceitful that he would try to manipulate me for money. I'm relieved I didn't fall for his act. Update 3. Apologies for the delay in updating. It's been a busy time for me. Work has been hectic, and until recently, nothing significant seemed worth sharing. For context, it's been 7 months since my last update. After my conversation with Jessica and the message I sent to my father, things had been quiet. I graduated, although none of my family attended to support me. Only my friends were there. I started my career, am financially stable, and am happy with the decisions I've made for myself. I thought the family drama was finally behind me, but that changed when my father showed up at my workplace. He didn't know where I lived, but he somehow found out where I worked and came to my office. Since he was waiting in the lobby, I had no choice but to see him. The moment he saw me, he broke down crying and hugged me. I wanted to push him away, but I avoided causing a scene at work. Instead, I took him to a nearby cafe. He kept insisting I take him to my home, but I refused. At the cafe, he revealed that Jessica had divorced him because he couldn't recover the money from me. Now he claimed he was alone and wanted to repair our relationship. I was stunned by how effortlessly he acted, as though everything was fine, reaching out to me as if nothing had happened, claiming he wanted to mend our relationship. I confronted him about what Jessica had revealed. He said, "Sometimes people lie to keep a relationship alive, but that doesn't mean I went behind your back." I never intended to give her your money. That's why I kept delaying her, and ultimately handed it to you. It was yours to begin with. I lost my patience with his excuses and asked why he had lied to Jessica in the first place. He responded, "After your mother passed, I was lonely. I needed someone in my life. Now that you're an adult, I hoped you'd understand. Do you think she would have married me if I hadn't mentioned the money? Or stayed if I told her I wouldn't give it to her? I did everything I could to keep the family together." I stared at him, wondering if this was the same person who had raised me, the father I once loved deeply. I told him, "You didn't do anything for the family. There was no family. It ended the day you brought that freeloader into our lives. Everything you did was for yourself, because you were afraid of being alone." He began to cry, admitting that marrying Jessica was the biggest mistake of his life, and asking me to give him another chance now that they were divorced. I reminded him of all the times he had chosen her over me, not just once, but repeatedly, especially when I needed him the most. He had supported the very person who tried to destroy my future. I told him I was done, that I no longer trusted him, and that he had made his choice years ago and now had to live with it. I wasn't responsible for his loneliness or bad decisions. I have my own life to focus on, and I'm finally at peace. He said he had come with high hopes, but now his heart was broken. I stood up and said, "You reap what you sow." Then I returned to my office and informed reception not to share my address or details with anyone who came looking for me. I don't feel guilty for cutting him off. He might be my only family, but sometimes you have to make tough choices to protect yourself. Update 4. This update is brief, but I thought it necessary since I've been getting repetitive questions, particularly about Jessica's business. Addressing these all at once should save me from answering individually. Jessica's, or rather my ex-stepmother's, business was fairly simple, though I personally found it unnecessary. She ran a birthday party planning service. Essentially, if someone wanted to host a birthday celebration but didn't want to organize it themselves, she would handle everything. It sounds impractical, and that's because it was. We didn't live in a large city or a market where ordinary people needed such services. There weren't celebrities or wealthy individuals around who would pay for this type of service. The business remained small, mostly a one-woman operation. Occasionally, her son, my stepbrother, would help, but not consistently. Unsurprisingly, it wasn't profitable. That's why she wanted my money, to expand her business beyond birthdays to events like small weddings and anniversaries. She also wanted to invest in equipment such as lighting, sound systems, and decorations to offer a broader range of services. I hadn't shared this detail before, but now that she's out of my life, I can discuss it openly. Many of you have also asked about my stepbrother and his activities. He and his friends often spent time at a car workshop owned by one of them. The shop had a questionable reputation because not all their work was legitimate. Some tasks weren't exactly legal. Jessica always hoped her son would turn his life around and get serious, but I never saw him make any effort. Occasionally, he worked at the shop, but it wasn't stable. Nor did he have any aspirations to find a proper job or pursue higher education. The most frustrating part is that my father knew all of this. He knew exactly what kind of person Jessica was and what her son was like. He was aware that her business wasn't going anywhere. Yet, instead of supporting me, his own child, he sided with them. That's what hurts the most. Any decent father would have ended that marriage. Or better yet, not married someone like her in the first place. After much reflection, I believe my father has been carrying a sense of emptiness since my mother's death. Instead of seeking professional help to deal with his grief and loneliness, he decided the best solution was to replace her. Unfortunately, his choice was Jessica. I hope this clarifies most of the questions I've received and saves me from having to address them in the comments. Update 5. It's been several months since my last update. I hadn't planned to post again, as there haven't been any significant changes in my life, but I thought I'd share a quick update about my father. I haven't spoken to him since our last encounter, but I've heard a few things from people still living in my hometown. Apparently, my father has found a new partner who, to no one's surprise, is a friend of Jessica's. I don't know her personally or the details of their relationship, but I hope it's not the same dynamic he had with Jessica, which was more about money than a genuine connection. However, knowing my father and the fact that this woman is connected to Jessica, my expectations aren't high. Regardless, I have no intention of re-establishing contact with him. My decision to cut ties remains firm, and I don't plan to meet his new partner. Even if he comes back asking for financial help, we all know how that will end. He won't get anything from me. It seems my father is stuck in the same cycle, searching for someone to fill the emotional void left by my mother's death. While I feel some pity for him, his problems are no longer mine. I truly hope his new relationship is different, but since he never listened to me in the past, there's little I can do to help him now.